in New York City. In cooperation with CBS Television, presents the distinguished reporter and news analyst Edward R. Murrow in See It Now, edited and produced by Mr. Murrow and Fred W. Friendly. A weekly presentation of Aluminum Company of America, the nation's leading producer of aluminum. Now, speaking to you from the control room of Studio 41 is the editor of See It Now, Edward R. Murrow.
This next report we call The Argument in Indianapolis. There was considerable argument there last week between the American Legion and a group of people who wanted to start a local chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. This was all filmed in a period of 5 days, and all the arguments will be presented by the people who actually participated. Our reporters were Joe Wershba and Ed Scott. Our cameraman, Charlie Mack, and Marty Barnett. That shaft is an Indianapolis landmark, a memorial to those who died in the war between the states. Indianapolis is a city of 475,000 people, located at almost the exact center of the state of Indiana. 3 blocks north of here is a memorial to the dead of World War I. This is the Indiana World War Memorial. It has an auditorium that seats 540. In the last part of October, a group of Indiana citizens booked the auditorium for the night of November 20 for a meeting to form an Indianapolis chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. On November 16, 4 days before the meeting, the reservation was canceled by the auditorium management. W. Roland Allen, a department store executive, begins the story for us.
On the 16th of October, a group of 60 or 70 fine men and women, professors from Indiana University and Purdue University, physicians, lawyers, housewives, and other good folk, got together in a local hotel here to decide whether or not it'd be wise to form an American Civil Liberties unit here in Indiana. So various simple committees were set up, one of which was to find a place to speak in. A few weeks later, we all got a notice that a room had been secured at the Indiana War Memorial, a vast and huge building erected in memory of the men who died in World War I, incidentally fighting, we think, for civil liberties. We had the east room of that building and felt secure in immediately sending out notices to several hundred people of the time and the place of a meeting. A few days before that meeting was scheduled, we heard to our surprise that the hall had been disallowed, our group, as a result of a protest from the American Legion and the Minutewomen, a group, by the way, that I personally had never heard of before. And so the old American problem of controversy came up, and many people mistook controversy for conspiracy.
Next, Wershba went to F.J. Starr Brown, manager of the War Memorial, and asked why permission to use the auditorium had been withdrawn.
When the American Civil Liberties Union applied to me to have a meeting, their local representatives in Indianapolis, as far as I knew, were very reputable people representing business and the learning in Indiana. So I granted them the privilege of setting the date for this meeting. After 2 weeks, I began to get letters from various groups, including the American Legion, the Minutewomen of Indiana, and others, realizing that this meeting must be of a controversial nature, which, agreeable to the rules and regulations that govern the use of this Indiana World War Memorial, I thereupon canceled the meeting of the American Civil Liberties Union.
Tell me, did you ever find out who these Minutewomen of Indiana are?
I do not know anything about the Minutewomen of Indiana. There is an organization of Minutewomen, but I don't know about them.
This is 3650 Washington Boulevard, the home of one of Indianapolis's Minutewomen. This is Miss Marguerite Dice, a past officer of the organization, who stated that she does not speak officially for the Minutewomen, but does not feel her statement contravenes their policy.
It has been said in the course of this dispute that the War Memorial Building was erected for the men who died in the last World War. That is not the whole truth. It was erected in memory of those men who gave their lives for the protection and preservation of the principles on which this country was founded. The inscriptions in it and outside of it bear witness to this. What a travesty it would be to open its doors for a meeting to which communists are welcome, when we know the open and avowed purpose of such is to overthrow our government by force and violence as well as by infiltration.
The heaviest objections came from the American Legion. This is Indiana State Commander Roy M. Amos.
The American Legion can never agree that the Indiana War Memorial is a fitting place for a meeting of the American Civil Liberties Union. The memorial is hallowed ground. It is a shrine sacred to the memory of thousands of gallant Hoosier patriots, many of whom died in Korea fighting communists. As such, it must never be used as a sounding board for the advocacy of any policy of pampering communists to the virtual exclusion of all others.
The decision that the War Memorial could not be used was announced on Monday. On Tuesday, the Civil Liberties people called the Claypool Hotel. A clerk told them the chateau room was available. Shortly after that, it was discovered that it had been previously booked. Then, the American Civil Liberties Union called the Continental Hotel on North Meridian Street. After that, the Riddick Piano Company, which has a large studio that is generally for rent. Next, the Civil Liberties Union went to the public library and asked for their auditorium. After that, the Indianapolis YMCA. All of these places reported that they were either previously booked or, for other various reasons, unavailable for the Friday night meeting. Wednesday, the American Civil Liberties Union went to the Knights of Columbus on North Delaware Street and were offered their hall. A price of $50 was agreed upon. But that night, the Knights of Columbus auditorium was withdrawn. We asked Grand Knight Donald Latendresse why.
Seem to have gotten involved in the middle of a situation which we had no desire to become involved in. We have been approached as to renting our hall to the American Civil Liberties Union, and at first thought could see no reason why it wouldn't be all right. However, upon further investigation, we find that it was a controversial issue, and since our membership is comprised of some 1,500 who have various views on different things, we feel that we didn't want to become involved in a controversial affair which might lead to internal strife in our organization. We felt that since the issue was controversial, that we should remain in the middle. However, it seems that you can't remain in the middle on a situation such as that. The very fact that we were approached by the organization to rent the hall put us in the middle, because if we refused, we were taking sides, and if we accepted, we were taking sides.
Of the 3 newspapers in Indianapolis, 2 ran editorials on the controversy. The Times, a Scripps Howard publication, opposed the Legion's ban and stated that liberty belongs to everyone or to no one. The Indianapolis Star, also Republican, said the Legion had a right to oppose the views of the ACLU, but had no right to prevent their meeting. Four churches were approached. None was available for the Friday night meeting. Then, less than 2 days before the meeting, an auditorium was finally offered. This is the corner of Vermont and New Jersey Streets, just a few blocks east of the War Memorial Building. Victor L. Goosens, pastor of St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church, offered them his church's social center. It was accepted. We asked Father Goosens why he had interested himself in the controversy.
Well, I suppose you could say that it was in rather a casual way that I became involved. The request was simply brought to my attention that the American Civil Liberties Union was rather anxious to find a place to meet, and the idea was put forward that perhaps they might be interested in using our auditorium. And of course I was perfectly willing to let them have that, even though they had been denied the use of several other auditoriums. for the simple reason that I had no reason to believe them unfit or unworthy for the use of our premises. And so, as the controversy developed, I found that it was not only a situation in which we ought to actually let them use it, but that we really should insist that they be given a place to meet. For the simple reason that it seems to me that there's something much more basic involved here than merely the idea of a meeting place. We have to be very careful, of course, to recognize the rights of minorities. You know, we all of us at some time or other are going to find ourselves in a minority group. Perhaps it might be politically, or it might be religiously, or it might be just a minority group on some other question. But we're going to find that we are at some time or other a minority. And if it is possible for any group outside of the legally constituted branches of government to restrain another from peaceful assembly and from the right to express themselves freely, then all our liberties are in danger. And I feel this way about it, that if an organization, no matter how well-intentioned it might be in its purposes, if one organization can prevent another group of people who are not traitorous, who are not subversive, from gathering together in peaceful assembly to discuss and to speak freely, then what guarantee would there be that later on another group might not decide that when I or my people gather together for purposes of worship or the exercise of the freedom of religion, that we should be stopped?
The meeting was held on Friday night. But that same night, the Indiana Department of the American Legion held an executive session. Part of their business was to protest the Civil Liberties Union meeting. At virtually the same moment in the meeting hall of St. Mary's, 3 blocks from the church, Professor Ralph F. Fuchs of the Indiana University Law School was calling to order the first meeting of the Indianapolis chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. Because these two meetings, running simultaneously, so paralleled each other in subject and debate, we have chosen to present them as we have political debate, with each side answering the other. The Legion spokesman can be distinguished by the traditional Legion overseas cap.
You are assembled here tonight to receive information on a new development on the red firing line in Indiana. I don't like to be told that anybody can't have a meeting. It gets my Irish up.
Mr. Commander, members of the Executive Committee, the fact that the meeting of the ACLU is being held in the social center of the Catholic Church does not constitute an endorsement of the ACLU by the Catholic Church. The use of the hall for the meeting was granted on the grounds that the organization had not yet been declared subversive by the Attorney General. And I hold with the American Legion that every effort should be made to expose any and all who are attempting to spread subversive propaganda.
This week's adventures in our community remind me of the old American habit of answering a man who says he wants to talk. We say, well, why don't you go hire a hall? This week, we found ourselves having great difficulty in carrying out that old American habit. But those who understand the spiritual purpose and the constitutional purpose of the American Civil Liberties Union are not going to be afraid. This is no time to be afraid.
The issue is the alerting of the people of Indiana to the fact that there is, being established in Indiana, a chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. This is an organization that is parading its avowed purposes of protecting the civil rights of individuals. With such a purpose, the American Legion can never quarrel. The American Legion itself is a civil liberties organization because it has repeatedly gone to the defense of veterans whose constitutional rights were threatened or invaded. I first heard of the American Civil Liberties Union about 20 years ago. But I heard of it from a Supreme Court judge of this state, a conservative old Republican, have come to realize that a true conservative and a true liberal will find themselves side by side protecting the civil rights of their fellow men. For the true meaning of the word conservative means that you wish to conserve the best of the past and pass it on the way you got it. A true liberal means a tolerance for the convictions of others and a willing to hear them out. And so in civil liberties, we find strange folks side by side who would disagree on everything else, excepting on the right of those who disagree with them to be heard.
The Indiana Department of the American Legion, with documentary evidence in hand of the facts that the speaker for the meeting of the ACLU has subscribed to and been a member of organizations listed as subversive, took the stand at an Indiana memorial dedicated to the memory of our war dead, should not be used as a sounding board for his philosophy or policy.
I take great pleasure in presenting Mr. Arthur Garfield Hayes of New York, General Counsel to the American Civil Liberties Union.
There's only one thing that I know of on which President Eisenhower and ex-President Truman seem to agree. And that is on the good work done by the American Civil Liberties Union. President Eisenhower made the following statement in connection with a dinner honoring 10 civil liberties organizations. I'm sure the people of the United States join in honoring the work of the distinguished private agencies which are doing so much to guard civil rights and to advance human rights in our nation. Since I understand the American Legion doesn't fully agree, I want to quote from what Douglas MacArthur said on December 30th, 1949. Roger Baldwin's crusade, Roger Baldwin is a man attacked today by the head of the Legion here. MacArthur said, Roger Baldwin's crusade for civil liberties has had a profound and beneficial influence upon the course of American progress, with countless individuals finding protection in the nobility of the cause he has long espoused. He stands out as one of the architects of our cherished American way of life.
Mr. Commander, in my hand I have a clipping taken from the Nation magazine of June the 28th, 1952. This clipping is an advertisement of the American Civil Liberties Union, which asks the reader to join with them in fighting the Smith and McCarran Act. I believe that any organization that would advertise such a fact cannot have the interest of the United States at heart. And I think Commander Amos is right in exposing them in Indiana.
That not 10% of our time has had to do with communists. As I said during my talk, what worries us chiefly is the fact that the non-communists are the people who suffer. And what's the matter with the controversial subject? Controversies as American as the Rocky Mountains or the 4th of July.
I understand that the American Civil Liberty Union has gone to the defense of Harry Bridges. According to all the information I have ever had on the matter, Harry Bridges is the head of the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union, which was expelled from the National CIO in 1949 for following the Communist Party line. The United States government has sought his deportation on the grounds that he is a subversive alien and obtained his citizenship under fraudulent conditions. An organization which gives aid and comfort to anyone such as Bridges does not belong in Indiana.
I think that pretty sacred to our concept of civilization is that we say to one another, let us agree to disagree agreeably. So far as I am concerned, the views of the extremists, whether from the right or the left, are rather obnoxious. But I feel that when they are met in the court of public opinion, with trial and error, with freedom to express and to nail the lies, that freedom and truth will become victors.
Dr. Bohr.
Mr. Commander,
fellow members of this executive committee, having full faith in and of the facts we each possess, as working legionnaires of the Department of Indiana, I move you that this executive committee approve the action taken by our commander and this department in this matter involving the ACLU, and I move and propose that we make this action unanimous.
Commander? I, Warren Allen of the 9th District, school supply salesman, take great pleasure in seconding this motion.
Gentlemen, you've all heard the motion as it has been made and duly seconded. Is there any question on the motion? Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as made, vote by the usual voting sign of aye. Aye. Those contrary, no. Been duly carried. Thank you so much.
The Legion had its say and its resolution, and the Civil Liberties Union had their meeting. Indianapolis is still there, and the controversy is everywhere. Father Goosens again.
Well, the fact that there was more excitement, it made me only that much more determined, because it proved to me in a way that the time had come when we had to take a stand on this. When the climate is such that so many people are so quick to take the law into their own hands, or rather, I should say, perhaps to ignore the law and to deny to others the right to peaceful assembly and free speech, then somebody certainly has to take a stand on the subject and prove to them that they are, in their activities, actually un-American in their way of procedure. And it's up to us, I think, to lead the way, because we know that the freedoms, American freedoms, are all based upon the rights which God has given us. And if the church and religion do not uphold those basic principles which come from God, then who will?
That was the argument in Indianapolis last week. Good night and good luck.
This is the CBS Television Network.